So the newest World Happiness Report recently came out and I want to talk about it. Sweden actually ranks number 4 in the world, which is pretty incredible. But I don't know about you, there are kind of mixed messages out there about Sweden. On one hand, you hear a lot of people complaining, about the cold and long winters, the darkness. It's really hard to socialize. And funny enough, it's not only foreigners, it's a lot of Swedes who complain about all of it as well. But then, on the other hand, you have a World Happiness Report where it says Sweden is number 4 in the world. So I want to dive a little bit deeper into that report and explore what makes Swedes actually happy and what is the basis of this report. But before we dive into this video, I really want to know why you think Sweden is one of the highest scored countries in the world. Let me know in the comments down below. Why is Sweden one of the happiest countries in the world? Thanks so much for subscribing to my channel, and if you want to connect a little bit more with me, I do have a newsletter you can subscribe to. There's a link in the description down below. It is actually quite funny. The World Happiness Report has a lot of details and obviously a lot of countries to talk about as well. But when I found out, the main score is actually made of only one question which they ask people in the country. And that question basically is from a scale from 0 to 10, which 0 is the least satisfied and 10 is the most satisfied. How satisfied are you with your life? That's the main question. This one question, which are asked in all of the countries, is the same question for all of the countries, and then people give it a score. And based on that score, they decide which is the happiest country in the world. And Sweden has that score over here, and that's the reason why it is number 4 in the world. But the funny thing is, the report actually has 6 indicators of why people score themselves and their life so highly. And I want to talk about these 6 indicators, which have their own score, but it basically backs a little bit why people probably think they are so satisfied with their life or dissatisfied in general. And I actually want to know, how would you score your life? Either if you live here in Sweden or in another country, let me know in the comments down below from 0 to 10, how satisfied are you with your life? I want to know how you feel. So the first indicator is the GDP per capita. And basically this measures the average income per person in a country adjusted for purchasing power. So how strong is the country's economy, whether things are getting better or worse, and how much money people on average are making or spending. And Sweden's GDP is pretty high, and it is also compared to other countries. So if you compare all the GDPs in the world, Sweden is ranking pretty high. So it indicates that in Sweden you have quite a high standard of living. Another indicator is social support. And first I thought about, of course, the government has a good, social system, and, that's why Sweden also ranks quite high. But actually, when I dive deeper into the content, what was asked, because there were specific questions, and actually there was only one question which was asked in the survey, and that was, if you were in trouble, do you have relatives or friends you can count on to help you whenever you need them or not? That was the main question, and this question was asked, in every country, and it doesn't really factor in the social system, the government. It is literally more about, friends or communities who can help you when you are in trouble. And Sweden actually scores quite high, which is a very interesting point because, Sweden sometimes comes across as people are not very tight, they're not very tight communities, or people are more individualists, they like to be for themselves, but that indicates that actually people really like to help other people. You have a tight family, not every single family in Sweden, of course, but overall in general. And people feel quite good about having a good community or a good network where if something happens, then they can rely on others. And again, this is also quite high compared to other countries. So whilst the government helps create a secure environment, the data is based on personal feelings of support, not just official services. I thought that was quite surprising. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Another indicator was healthy life expectancy. And this part was not so much a question. This is based on data in every country. And here Sweden also scores very high. And I looked a little bit up how it is calculated. It combines life expectancy at birth with data on years lived in poor health. That basically means it's not only based on how long people live in a country, it's also based on like how healthily they live until they die. So for example, if someone lives to 82 but spends the last 10 years with serious health issues, their healthy life expectancy might be 72. So I thought that was quite interesting to see. And yeah, Sweden, to no surprise, maybe scores quite high because the overall feeling is that they live quite healthily and they start very early on. It starts with school meals. You know, I can see they always have buffet style meals and there's a lot of vegetables included. Yes, the kids can choose by themselves, but more often than not, the kids would choose at least one vegetable on their plate. And then there's a lot of movement in Sweden as well. People spend a lot of time in nature. They love hiking. You know, they have different sports here in Sweden. So yeah, it does make sense that Sweden scores quite high, which is a nice thing to know. Another indicator was freedom to make life choices. And surprise, surprise, Sweden actually scored quite high here as well. Of course, it is also compared to other countries, but autonomy contributes heavily to happiness. And what does it mean? It means that, you know, you can make choices about where to live, about your career, about your job, who to marry, what kind of lifestyle you want to live. So people feel empowered to shape their lives the way they want. And I think Sweden is definitely a country where you have a lot of choices about your life, and that feels good. And there are other countries like Finland and Norway, so the Scandinavian countries, which are scoring quite high in general. How do you feel about it? Let me know in the comments down below. Then there's another indicator, perception of corruption. And that actually asks two questions. So this is based on a survey again, like how do you perceive corruption in the government, but also within businesses? And Sweden actually scored quite high compared to other countries. There's definitely a bigger trust in the government and also in businesses here in Sweden, and therefore they scored higher, although it's not super high. In general, it looks like a lot of countries don't have so much trust in their government and in their businesses, but Sweden, compared to other countries, still scores higher. And again, this is based on feelings, so on personal opinions. It's not a matter of if a country is actually corrupt or not, you know, like based on facts. This is just based on feelings. But I have read this before, that Swedes actually have a much higher trust in their government, in services, you know, in human beings in general. And I think that is a really good thing, although I know that this can be sometimes abused. But having this kind of mindset, I think, is really, really good. And the last indicator is generosity. And that part is actually quite interesting because Sweden actually scores much lower than many, many countries. So I wanted to know what is really behind it, because I don't really think Swedes are not generous. And what I found out is because in Sweden you pay a lot of taxes, that is seen as generous already. You know, you are giving back to society through taxes. Plus, there are also other ways to give back. You know, there's volunteering or other informal support, which is not part of the survey. Here, it is really just one question, basically, which is, have you donated money to a charity in the last month? And again, Sweden scores a little bit lower here compared to other countries. US, for example, is a country, quite a generous country when it comes to money given to charities. But that is also because they have a very different system. You know, there's not so many things set up for people to actually donate or be part of, you know, a generous giving. Whilst here in Sweden, again, through taxes, they know because they pay taxes, there are a lot of things which are automatically be taken care of. That means that their personal giving is not as high as in other countries. So we talked about all the indicators, but one thing I also wanted to talk a little bit, which was part of the World Happiness Report, was happiness by age. And there you can see a little bit of, you know, a process where older people are actually happier than younger people. And I wanted to also dive a little bit deeper into that because I questioned myself, why is that? And there's a little bit of an explanation why there is a bit of a decline in happiness in younger people. And this is not so much only based on Sweden, I have to say, because they didn't really provide data just on Sweden. So this applies more for Europe, not even the world. So there is a little bit more specific data on Europe. But yeah, one of the reasons is increased screen time and social media use. And that is a very interesting part to talk about it. And I'm not talking about this today because it will just make the video so much longer. But if you're interested in talking about it, we can do that in the comments down below. But it totally makes sense that it shapes the perception of the world for sure with increased screen time and social media use. Then there are mental health challenges. You know, there is reported levels of anxiety, depression, and loneliness, which are higher among younger people. There's global crisis and uncertainty, and that is definitely part of, you know, also the anxiety and depression. Youth today have grown up with a constant stream of bad news, and bad news is more accessible now as well, which doesn't help. There's climate change, wars, economic instability, and pandemics, and a lot of reporting about it coming back to social media. You know, if you are like regularly on social media, you will not be able to avoid what's going on in the world. Maybe you should not, but I know myself as well. I cannot educate myself on a daily basis what's going on in the world because there's a lot of bad things happening and it does affect you. So you have to have a little bit of self-protection. And there's economic pressures, you know. If you compare what you can buy today with your parents, what they spend, you know, everything is so much more expensive. And there are concerns about job security, housing costs, and economic inequality. All these play a role. And there are also weaker community ties, you know, because the world is so accessible through the internet. Communities is not such a big thing like it was compared to the past, obviously. You know, family gatherings, community activities, but even religion has changed over the years. And I'm talking here about Europe, the Nordics. These traditional sources of connection are in decline, and the quality of social support may not always be as strong, even in well-off societies. So yeah, I thought that was very interesting. Do let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Let's start a discussion. What did you think about the World Happiness Report? Obviously, I will leave a link down below. You can have a look at the report yourself. Thank you so much for watching till the end, and I will see you in my next video. Hej då!